highly recommend that you come up on stage later and see the technological marvel that is going to keep that whiteboard in place when the wind picks up. That's Trimurti's genius. You know, as I thought about it, I thought that maybe I was thinking about blue corn chips, actually. And maybe that was God's first sign to Diksha that she was going to become a Nayaswami. You know, Yogananda wrote about there being two currents in this life, two forces in the universe, opposing forces in the universe. One of them, the force of creation, and you can call it Satan, you can call it Maya, but it's just the force that is going out from God to make the whole show happen. And the other is a unitive force that is drawing everything back to God. And sooner or later, each one of us awakens to the thought that maybe we'd like to spend more time in the unitive current and a little bit less time in the creative current, because the creative current doesn't get us where we want to go. We have this notion of where we want to go. We have this notion of seeking happiness that's deep in every single human being's heart. And yet we go about it in quite the wrong way for a very, very long time. And I was so enjoyed Bharat's story yesterday about trying to get out beyond the waves, beyond the tall breaking waves in Hawaii, because that is so much what each one of us faces, that we are trying to get back to God, and we try to get back to it by fighting the current of the creative force. In other words, we try to manipulate the world around us, the created world, so that we can obtain that happiness. And we try it lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And each time we end up looking just like Bharat looked after he came back from the waves, like drowned rats. And until finally we meet someone who knows how to do this. And in Bharat's case, it was the person who said, no, you have to go underneath the waves as they come at you. And that's the way to get out there. And I thought that was such an apt analogy to what we all need to do in the spiritual life, because we need to go underneath the apparent reality, underneath trying to manipulate things outside of ourselves, and frankly, underneath the superficial parts of who we are, and start to work with the deeper elements of who we are. And that the yamas are really about no longer trying to fight our way back through just trying to overcome the creative force. We can't do that. The creative force is too strong. And I have a few suggestions for God when he has a chance to listen to me about whether the creative force should exist at all. But in the meantime, it exists. And if we just try and fight our way back there, going through those waves, we're going to lose. And the yamas are about, no, stop trying to do that. Stop wasting your energy. It's not going to work. And the niyamas say, you need to align yourself with a more powerful current. Okay? Not the creative current. You need to do that which is going to put you in sync with the unitive force that is drawing everything back to God. And then as we go into the subsequent stages of Ashtanga Yoga, what it does is it takes us to those subtler levels of being where we can dive beneath the surface and start to work with other factors in our lives, other things that are perhaps tying us to the creative current rather than letting go and kind of diving underneath those waves. And the first three that we come to are the asana, pranayama, pratyahara. And those are what I'm going to talk about. You know, as Master said that, and I'm going to give you some interesting quotations from Yogananda here that you don't necessarily hear all the time. He said that the purpose of asana, the purpose of this third stage of Ashtanga Yoga, is simply to rise above or stop the motions of the body, which cause restlessness in the soul. I thought that's interesting. I thought the soul was always perfect. That the soul was perfection of stillness, that there's no imperfection there. But he said that no, of course, that we, as long as we're in the state of ego, consciousness, the very definition is the soul identified with the body, the ego not being something separate from the soul. It's just a misperception of the soul where it identifies with the body. And that means that if the body is restless, the soul is going to be restless. And if God is perfect peace and the soul is restless, there's no possibility of merging. There's no possibility of getting back to God as long as the soul is in that state of restlessness. And it's one thing to completely disidentify with body, personality, likes, dislikes, hopes, dreams, fears, that complete human package. But we can start smaller. We can start by saying, okay, let's see if we can bring the body into stillness. And this is that state of asana. In all the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali just dedicates three only to asana, and only one of those does he say what asana is. As asana is a steady, comfortable position. Period. Asana is not triangle pose. It's not headstand. It's not the triple pretzel pose. Okay? Asana is just a steady, comfortable position. The understanding being that a position for meditation. Because meditation is the only way that in whatever way we practice it, there's not just one technique of meditation in this world, but meditation in general is the only way that we're going to get back to that perfect stillness of God consciousness rather than restlessness of body, personality consciousness. So there are some very simple guidelines for how we can attain that state of asana. Again, it's a state. It's a place that we can get to. Very simple. And Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda have outlined them in many different places, but just they're the first one, a straight spine. Straight spine. Straight spine is what allows the energy to flow abundantly in the body and ultimately allows the energy to get to the brain, which is where we really need it if we're going to find enlightenment. Yogananda used to say a bent spine is the enemy of self-realization. That's putting it pretty bluntly. Well, that's good because straight spine, we can do that. That's not too hard. That's one. Second is a little harder. Relaxation. I think the way our culture is going, it gets harder and harder to do relaxation every day. People are so wound up. You know, they sometimes come here to the expanding light where there is no cell phone reception. And they think they're going to relax, and they see just whether relaxation is possible without the cell phone working. And for some people, it takes some days. And for some people, it takes many days. And some people never quite make it to the place where they can be relaxed without cell phone reception. We see little pilgrimages up the hill to the place where they can get cell phone reception because you got to stay in touch, right? You have to stay. Relaxation. Swami Kriyananda said, by perfect relaxation, the entire science of yoga can be mastered. Interesting. By perfect relaxation, the entire science of yoga can be mastered. That's why in Ananda Yoga practice, we put such a strong emphasis on relaxation, which is not to say that we're lying around doing nothing, but whatever we're doing, whether we're putting out a lot of energy or just lying in corpse pose, sitting upright for meditation, that relaxation is a key, because if we don't have relaxation, we don't have comfort. If we don't have comfort, we don't have asana. We can't reach the state of asana. But what kind of relaxation? A relaxation inward. Most people, when they think of relaxation, think of downward. Downward relaxation. But the spiritual path, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Because downward relaxation is literally that. It is a letting go. It is a sort of a journey down the spine. It becomes passive. And passivity invites the influence of the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is that which causes us to cling to that which has always been the case. Causes us to cling to our separation from God, because that is what we are accustomed to. And that's the job of the subconscious mind, to help us do what we've always done. And you know the adage, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always gotten. And relaxation needs to be a relaxation upward. Not only inward, but upward. And that's where the third aspect of asana comes in. Sitting upright, standing upright, but especially for meditation, sitting upright, because it is that upright posture. I know a lot of people don't like to meditate sitting upright. They'd rather meditate lying down. But an upright posture with a straight spine has energy. It has dynamism to it. It in itself helps to uplift consciousness. It helps to draw us away from the pull of the subconscious, the pull at the base of the spine toward separation. So, straight spine, relaxation, even when you're sitting on a hard metal chair, and upright posture. That's what it takes for asana. How hard is that? Well, a better question is, how long can that last? When we go into meditation, we say to ourselves, I am going to sit upright, straight spine, with relaxation, come what may, for the first 5 minutes. Okay? Really, if we can do it for the first 5 minutes, we're going to be able to forget about the body. We're going to be able to get to a place where the body's needs are not so pressing. And yes, we may change our position after a while, but if we start changing our position every minute or so at the very start of our meditation, it's going to be a movement meditation, and it's not going to be a deep meditation. So when you sit to meditate, or when you sit, listen to a class, just vow to yourself, for the next, fill in the blank, X minutes, I am not going to move the body. Got my eyes open, I'm allowed to blink, I'm allowed to breathe, that's it. You make a vow like that to yourself. If we can resist the temptation to indulge the body in moving every time it gets a little bit uncomfortable, whether it's a meditation or not, what we're doing is we're starting to cultivate that state of asana. And we can do that anytime. We can do it standing in line at the store. We can do it driving the automobile. We can do it walking. We can do it anytime. We can cultivate the state of asana. And as I said earlier, cultivating any one of these stages toward enlightenment helps us toward all of the others. Helps us toward all of the others. The Master said that the asanas the asanas as the science of Hatha Yoga. He said they're useful, but not essential. Not essential. And in fact, he put it very interestingly. He said that many people practice asana and begin to enjoy the freedom of the body. They practice the gymnastic element of it. They enjoy the suppleness of the body. They begin to enjoy the freedom of the body, and they forget to enjoy the freedom of the mind and soul. It's easy to get stuck there. There are a lot of people who get stuck there. But the state of asana, that is the place we want to get stuck. It's just not the practice of asanas that we want to get stuck at. But more useful than asana, said, is this freedom of energy in mind, which is where we come to the next stage of Ashtanga Yoga, the stage that's called pranayama. Pranayama literally translates as control, yama, of prana, the life force. Yogananda said in another quotation, pranayama is the greatest technique of uniting soul and God. Period. Pranayama is the greatest technique of uniting soul and God. I imagine he was talking about a very specific pranayama, okay, the pranayama of Kriya Yoga. But there are many, many so-called pranayama techniques in yoga, and they're generally thought of as breathing techniques. And breathing techniques are pranayamas, but pranayama isn't limited to just breathing techniques. Anything that helps us control the life force is a pranayama technique. And the technique par excellence for practicing that for anybody, really, is the energization exercises. Very interesting point about the energization exercises, because they teach us to place prana under direct control of the will. When we practice breathing exercises, prana is involved, of course. You can't breathe without prana being involved. But in breathing exercises, the focus tends to be on the breathing process, not on the movements of prana that cause the breathing process to happen. So yes, we control prana with breathing exercises, but it is an indirect control. Energization exercises, in the beginning, we start with indirect control also. We focus on the physical tension and physical relaxation in the exercises. But as we progress with these exercises, as we get more and more comfortable with them, able to go to a deeper level, it starts to be not about the physical tension and relaxation. That still happens. But starts to be about connecting directly with awareness, with intention, connecting directly with the life force and beginning to bring it under our control. This is not something that is universally understood in the yoga community today. A friend of mine recently told me, it was a while back actually, that she and her husband were out at a restaurant down in Los Angeles, and they were having dinner, and the next table to them, the next booth over, had a lot of people at it, and they were having a very animated discussion. And so she and her husband decided to kind of listen. What was this discussion all about? And it turned out that it was a group of yoga teacher trainees from a nearby yoga school. And their discussion was really more the form of a debate. And the debate was, which gives you a better high? Pranayama practice or marijuana? And after considerable discussion, they came to the conclusion that the winner was marijuana, but not by a wide margin. But this is how many people look at pranayama practice, as a kind of a way of getting high. And you can sort of get that giddiness, but that's not what pranayama is about. Pranayama is about, as Yogananda put it, disconnecting the five sense telephones. Okay? Of stopping sensory disruption in the mind. Signals come from the senses, from the periphery of our body to the mind. Pranayama is about cutting that, stopping it. You know, we do unconscious pranayama or subconscious pranayama every night. We go to sleep, we disconnect the sense telephone. Somebody walks into the room, and you probably won't hear them unless they're real noisy. If you're awake, you'd hear them easily. Disconnecting the 5 sense telephones. And what that involves is simply taking the energy that is normally animating the senses, that is normally being sent out to the senses, often in craving for something like blue corn chips, and drawing it back. Because every time we have a desire for some kind of sensory engagement, literally, energy rushes out from the brain to the relevant sense faculty, right, to the relevant chakra, because the bottom 5 chakras, each one of them controls a different one of the 5 senses, and then from there out to the periphery of the body. There's a constant flood of energy going out there. And it not only disrupts the mind, but it engages a whole lot of our energies that would be much better if we could bring them up to the brain instead. So pranayama is intended to disconnect that. And the way we disconnect that is to quiet the heart. Quiet the heart. Yogananda said that, describing his time with his guru, Sri Yukteswar, he said, we had a nice time with the breathing exercises for a while. But Master said to us that breathing exercises are only about quieting the heart. If we can quiet the heart, what we start to do is shut down sensory input to the brain. And that any breathing exercise that we do, Hong Sa is a perfect example. The goal of these exercises is to stop the breath. Isn't that interesting? The goal of breathing exercises is to stop breathing. Right? Not because you hold your breath, but because you quiet the whole body, the heart, the mind, you quiet everything so much the body doesn't need to breathe anymore. If the body doesn't need to breathe anymore, the heart's not going to need to beat. The heart's not going to need to beat, sense telephones get disconnected. This is pranayama practice. And there are several elements of it. We can practice pranayama all the time, just drawing energy away from the periphery, just through relaxation. Just the relaxation. Find one body part right now that's unnecessarily tense. I'm sure you have many. All right? Choose one and just decide, I'm going to relax that body part. Right now I'm going to relax inward and upward. Easy to do. Relaxation. Another, willpower. We learn to put, through energization, through other techniques, but energization particularly, we learn to place the life force under the control of the will, to the point that we can move it where we want to in the body. You don't have life force where you want it, grab onto it with the will, move it. Simple, right? Simple concept. Sometimes it's easier than others, but willpower, not a forcing kind of willpower, just guiding. Says, no, not there, please. There. So relaxation, willpower, concentration. Wherever you concentrate, energy goes. Any place you concentrate, energy goes. You concentrate on a piece of cake, energy goes there. You concentrate on your spine, energy goes there, away from the periphery. Relaxation, willpower, concentration, and yes, the breathing practices. But remember what they're about. They're about getting the bodily mechanism to shut down, not about getting high. Okay? They should feel good. There's no reason they shouldn't feel good. But they're about bringing the whole process to a halt. When we can do that, then we have disconnected the senses. Then we're in the state of pranayama. Actually, we're beyond that. Then, when we've really disconnected from the senses, we're in the state of pratyahara. We're not getting the external stimuli anymore. We're in the state of the interiorized mind. That's what pratyahara means. Okay? Interiorization of the mind, a withdrawal from sense stimulation. But the question is, for how long are we going to be in that place? If we don't do something, we're likely to be drawn out. Not by the senses necessarily, but rather because there's probably not a one of us that needs the senses in order to be drawn outward. There's lots of other things that can draw our attention outward. our fantasies, our plans, our worries, our regrets, our ambitions. All this stuff can just draw us out in perhaps a more engaging way than the senses ever could. And that pratyahara, to continue, we have to find a way to stop that process. Swami Kriyananda said this about pratyahara. He said, interiorization is not only a state one achieves, it is an attitude that must be cultivated conscientiously throughout the journey. We can practice it all day long. In fact, the extent to which we practice it all day long is going to be a preview of our next meditation. The way we live our lives, meditation is not disconnected from the rest of our lives. The rest of our lives is a preview, coming attractions. Here's what's going to happen next time you sit to meditate. We practice pratyahara, we practice that interiorization of the mind, that pulling back from full engagement outwardly, always holding on to the inner awareness. It's going to be a lot easier to meditate next time we sit to meditate. If we just let our energies spill out all over the place into whatever we're doing, even if we're very focused, if it's a matter of spilling out and not holding to that inner awareness, well, the next meditation is going to be spilling out too. Swami recommends one particular practice kind of above all for cultivating the state of pratyahara, that interiorization. It's called titiksha. Titiksha, which doesn't translate very well into English. He actually gives a threefold translation. Titiksha is endurance, it is even-mindedness, and it is non-involvement. Endurance, even-mindedness, non-involvement. None of them seems like very much fun, actually. But when we cultivate them, they become a lot of fun. Because what they do is they open the door to the inner world. That when we develop that art of pulling back from whatever's happening to us, if it's a happy thing, focus on the happiness inside that it reminds us of. And if it's an unhappy thing, as Diksha was saying, even-minded and cheerful. At all times, that's the way of the yogi. I remember the first time I went into Yosemite National Park. I was driving down the curvy road that goes into the valley. And at one point, those of you who've been there, know that at one point the view just opens up. And this was late springtime. And all the waterfalls were just gushing into the valley. Everything was gorgeous green. And it took my breath away, that view. And I pulled the car over and just soaked in as much as I could of Yosemite Valley. And I remember I couldn't get as much as I wanted. It wasn't, whatever I was doing wasn't enough. I couldn't appreciate it as much as I wanted to. And right in that beauty was a sense of disappointment. The sense that the whole thing was just taken down a couple notches because I wanted to envelop it all, embrace it all, and I couldn't do it. And I realized later that what I needed to do was titiksha. And what I needed to do was to bring that inside. Because why do I appreciate it? Because the capacity to enjoy the beauty is not out there. But it's in here, and to focus on the internal beauty that outward scene reminded me of. That's titiksha. So when we practice pratyahara, it's not a denial. It's not a self-denial. It's not a denial of gratification. It is a turning inward to a greater degree of gratification. Okay? And that takes much of the preceding states. It takes certainly pranayama, being disconnected from external stimuli and be able to do what seems outwardly, may even seem to us as doing nothing, but it's what makes us able, makes us ready to go into the deeper states I just want to finish with a story. There was a king, and in the king's domain were many, many temples, and the king was kind of going through something he did periodically, was going from temple to temple to temple just to see that everything was being done properly. And he happened one day to be at this particular temple, and they were having their puja, their worship ceremony, and they had made a bunch of little cakes, their prasad, the blessed food that they were going to distribute after the ceremony. And the king went through the puja with everyone, and he noticed, as this was happening, that there was a Swami sitting off to the side, doing nothing, just not participating in the puja, eyes closed, just doing nothing. And after the puja was over, one of the officials of the temple distributed the prasad to everyone, including the Swami, who then did open his eyes and open his mouth as well. And the king was wondering about that. And he went over to the person who distributed the prasad, and he said, who is that Swami over there? I don't see him doing anything. He didn't participate in the puja. He just sat there. Why did you give him cake? What does he do here? And the official said, well, actually, he doesn't do anything here. None of us has ever seen him do anything. We don't know why he's here. He just sits there. And the king said, oh, and you feed him? And the official said, yes, Maharaj. Okay, let's see. So the king went over to the Swami. And he said, Sadhuji. Yes, Maharaj. I see that you're taking the food here. That's true, they are feeding me. What do you do here? Nothing. So you take the food, but you do nothing in return. You have described it very accurately, Maharaj. What gives you the right to take food if you do nothing? Well, you see, Maharaj, doing nothing is the hardest thing of all. And the king said, bah, I can do nothing. Watch me. The Swami said, do it if you can, sire. So the king sat down, closed his eyes, didn't move a muscle for 5 minutes, after which he opened his eyes. He said, see, that was easy. You said it was hard. And the Swami says, excuse me, Maharaj, but you were not doing nothing. You were thinking of buying some new horses for your stables. And the king bowed at the sadhu's feet. He says, you have shown me what doing nothing is. Thank you. And he called the temple official over. He said, in future, after the puja, give him 2 pieces of cake, not 1. So these states of inner self-sufficiency, they would prepare us for the higher stages of Ashtanga, which Riemann hopefully will now tell us how to obtain.